Case 623 by Danny Yu. Chapter 25. I understand, Alexander Pierce said. Get the scientists working on a stronger material for restraints. I could distract industries if need be, but that cannot happen again. If we have to keep him restrained for the rest of the gestational period, that is what we will do. But no more shock therapy. The clearly frightened underlings scrambled to do his bidding, but they did do it well. When the asset began to regain awareness several months later, his bulging belly a constant reminder. There was nothing he could do about it. "Maria's scared," Jamie told him softly one night, padding into the workshop in socks and pajamas, trusty Bucky Bear held under one arm. Tony turned away from his work, blinked a moment to focus on his son's face. He was so goddamn tired, his vision swam around the edges. "Why is she scared?" he asked. "Because she was wrong," Jamie said. "The bad guys, they took us and we hadn't done anything. You weren't even a superhero anymore and you had stopped sticking your nose in their business. They took us anyway. And then Nat and Steve and Uncle Brody and Uncle Bruce stuck in their noses and saved us. So we can't be bad to do that even though they're all telling her it is." Tony frowned a moment at the sudden introduction of some mysterious them, but he knew Jamie was talking to Sanchez too, and if the Maria situation was getting more worrying, she would tell him. "Well, being wrong can't be scary," he said, and for a moment his mind flashed back to the 10 Rings camp in Afghanistan, staring at piles upon piles of Stark weapons, unable to believe what he was seeing. That sense of everything turning on its head, everything being wrong, nothing making sense anymore. He remembered that all too clearly. Jamie gave a small pale smile and padded across the floor, crawling up into Joni's lap and cuddling close, even as he nodded. "Captain America isn't really a bad man either," he commented softly. "He isn't," Tony confirmed. "Is there—" He stopped, frowned. It was difficult to get his thoughts into the proper order. When was the last time he slept? "If you have any questions, or Maria does, I'll do my best to answer them. I may not always be right, but I'll give it my best try." For long moments, Jamie was silent, a warm, steadying weight in Tony's arms. Then he looked up at him, pale gray eyes wide. "When people get to make their own choices, are those choices all dumb?" A strange shiver went down Tony's spine. He shook it off, made himself focus on the question, on soothing his son's fears rather than his own. "No," he said. "Not all. Some will be. We all make dumb choices sometimes. I mean, it's not like Alexander Fleming meant to make penicillin. It was just a weird fungus that grew on his stuff or something, but thank Thor's dad, we've got it, right? Marie Curie died from radiation sickness because she liked to carry radioactive material around in her pockets, but she also founded nuclear physics as a field of science. Isaac Newton began to puzzle out his theories on gravity because he got hit in the head by a falling apple." He smiled, stroked a careful hand through Jamie's hair. "And you. I never planned for you, but you're still the best thing that has ever happened to me. Thing is, without the ability to make dumb choices and mistakes, we'd still be stuck in the Stone Ages. Burning our fingers on the soldering iron stings like a bitch, but how else are we supposed to learn how to wear work gloves?" Jamie flashed him a brief, mysterious grin. "You don't always wear work gloves when you solder." "Well, maybe I'm a slow learner," Tony told him, "but you understand what I mean, right? If you don't let people make their own choices, you may be able to keep them safer, but they won't ever have a chance to grow or become the people they can be. And we'd all be worse off for it in the end." Jamie nodded. "I get it," he said. "Maria does too. It makes sense." Tony flashed him a grin, leaned in, and pressed a kiss to the top of his head. "If either of you have more questions, just ask. I'll give you the best answer I've got, and then you can make up your own mind, all right?" "Thank you, Daddy," Jamie said. Then his whole face scrunched up around a yawn. "I think I want to sleep now," he said. "Sleep well, buddy," Tony replied. "Tony?" Natasha said, looking straight at him. Tony looked blearily back before focusing on his coffee once more. He had tried to sleep again last night, but had managed less than 2 hours before a nightmare woke him up. This one bad enough to leave him gasping and trembling on the floor for hours after making Jarvis show him the video feed from Jamie's room. His whole body still felt weak from it, and a strange lump remained lodged in his throat, damn near immovable. And he was still so tired. "You need help," she said. "Everyone's noticed, but apparently the consensus is that we're all treating you like glass at the moment. So I'm going to tell you what everyone knows and no one has the guts to say. You need professional help. You are running on no sleep. You are jumpy. Your decision-making skills are questionable.
Aren't you and Gab supposed to be training with those SHIELD special ops teams? Tony asked, lifting his mug and taking a long swallow. It didn't do much to wake him up. His hands threatened to shake around it.
You're being a shit father, Natasha said at last. Jamie is worried sick about you. A blind person could tell you that. Sending him off to a psychologist isn't enough, Tony. Not nearly. Not when you won't get yourself the help you need. You are compromising his progress, and sooner or later you're going to make a shitty call, and he'll be the one to pay. Get help. With that, she turned and walked away.
Tony drained the last of the coffee and poured himself another mug.
Daddy? Jamie said, voice very soft as he crawled up onto the couch next to Tony, burrowing in against his side. He was a little too pale, with traces of dark circles around his eyes. Tony had sat up with him for hours last night after he woke sobbing from a nightmare and couldn't go back to sleep. Gods, what was he supposed to do? Even therapy didn't seem to do its job very well anymore. Should people who are stronger and smarter get to decide over everyone else? Jamie asked, jolting him out of his fearful contemplations. Tony blinked, wrapped his arm around Jamie while raising his other hand and rubbing it over his face, trying to get rid of the slow, gritty feeling that had been taking him over. How long had he been sitting here just staring at nothing? Then he processed the question and blinked again. Frowned. Of course not, he said at last. He took a long moment to try to crunch the information he needed to impact down to a level where he could make it understandable. Jamie might be a genius, but he was still just 4 years old. I'm objectively smarter than the president, right? At least if we talk about pure IQ. You are too. If I put on the armor, I'm stronger than him too. Does that mean I should get to be president? Jamie shrugged. Maybe you'd be good at it, he said. Maria thinks so. Tony couldn't help a small grin. That was so utterly sweet, it tugged at something in him, made it go tight and tender. Thank you, he said. I'm not sure you're right about that. But you know why the president is the president, right? Another shrug. He won an election, Jamie said. Tony nodded. No, he said. I'm not saying democracy is the perfect system, because not all people are good, and sometimes people collectively, are morons. But the idea is that everyone, even the weakest, dumbest person in the country, gets to have a hand in choosing who decides over them. That means, in theory, that the leader owes them. The people chose who they thought would do the most to take care of them and their wants and needs. And so the leader owes them to do that. You know what I mean? He is responsible, in a way someone who has just chosen on his own that he should make all the choices isn't. If you just take power because you're strongest, then you can be as mean as you want, and the people who are not as strong end up suffering. Besides, we may have a higher IQ than the president, or perhaps that was too high a level. Aunt Pepper gets to make a lot of choices for Stark Industries, you know. Objectively, IQ-wise, she isn't as smart as us. But we both know that Aunt Pepper is really smarter than anyone, right? Just a different way. Slowly, Jamie nodded. And she knows you let her decide, so she isn't going to make bad choices. She's going to be responsible. Exactly, Tony said. It's like I get to decide over you quite a bit. Is that because I'm stronger and smarter, or because I'm your dad? Then he frowned. Actually, maybe that's not the right example. Anyway, I get to choose until you've made enough small choices on your own to do it for yourself. But it's never with the goal that I get to make all your choices for you for the rest of your life. It's to keep you safe until you can do it for yourself. And in the meantime, I still listen to you, right? When we have to make choices for others, it's either because we love them and want to help them until they're ready to be on their own, like some countries America makes choices for right now. Or it's because they've trusted us to make those choices for them, which means we're responsible to them and owe it to them to make the right calls. I think. He frowned, rubbed at his face again. Jamie nodded again. Then his face tucked into such an expression of utter heartbreak, Tony felt something inside him crack just from looking at that small face. How bad a kid do you gotta be to make your parents leave you? He asked, and fuck it, that wasn't enough to make Tony want to break down and cry. Suddenly, all he wanted was to find Jamie's mom, hunt her down, and force her to apologize to this wonderful, amazing little boy who she was never, ever going to deserve. You can't, he said. A child cannot be that bad. Not possible. It's always, only ever going to be the parent's fault. Sometimes there are going to be extenuating circumstances.
he added. Parents can die, and it's not necessarily anyone's fault. Or parents can be in positions where they are not capable of taking care of their kids. And the best thing they can do, the most loving thing, is to let them be with someone who can. But even that is never the child's fault. Never. Jamie gave a small smile at that. Tony sucked in a heavy, painful breath. Do you miss your mom? He asked. Jamie blinked, looking almost confused for a moment. Then he shook his head. No, he said. I don't care about her. I got you. But Maria doesn't have anyone. Tony sighed, pulled Jamie closer until the boy was almost in his lap, and pressed a kiss to the top of his head. He was so fragile in Tony's arms. She's got us, doesn't she? The grin Jamie gave him was strong enough to make Tony smile back automatically, regardless of whatever disturbing thoughts and questions this whole conversation had brought up. Mr. Stark, Dr. Sanchez said when Tony came to pick up Jamie, if I could have just a quick word. Tony nodded, squeezing Jamie's shoulder before leaving him to the toys in the waiting room and following Dr. Sanchez into her office. What is it? He asked. You must know that Jamie is very worried about you, she said. He says you don't sleep, you don't eat enough, you don't smile enough. He says when you do sleep, you wake up screaming. He is making himself sick over you. She paused a moment, then sighed. I can recommend a colleague of mine if you need help, but I can tell you that you do need to change things either way. Jamie can't make any more progress with me while he worries about you. Tony swallowed. I'll take that under advisement, he said, feeling torn in a dozen different directions and simultaneously utterly unable to move. What was he supposed to do now?